Welcome to our third METRANS Industry Outlook. My name is Jen Giuliano, and I'm the director of the METRANS Transportation Center and also a professor here in the Saul Price School of Public Policy. The reason that there's a Thomas O'Brien right here is that he's coming up next. For those of you who don't know, METRANS is a partnership of USC and California State University Long Beach. On the USC side, it includes the Viterbi School of Engineering and the Price School here where we are today. On the Long Beach side, it includes the College of Engineering, the Center for International Trade and Transportation, the Department of Economics, and the School of Business, all at Cal State Long Beach. So you can see that we have a very diverse consortium of faculty who are involved in the METRANS Center. The center itself is funded by federal, state, and local grants, as well as by corporate and agency donors through the METRANS Associates Program. You should look at the back of your program for a list of our associates. The program contributes to the core funding of our center and helps to sponsor tonight's event. We're most grateful for the support of our METRANS associates. Tonight's program addresses what we think is a very critical topic, the future transportation professional. And our topic tonight is perfect for introducing the newest member of the METRANS family, the Southwest Transportation Workforce Center. And you see the logo here behind us. One of 5 regional centers that were funded in December by the Federal Highway Administration to promote workforce development in the United States. The fondly called SWTWC, I think we have to find something better, is headquartered at Long Beach and is led by Dr. Tom O'Brien, our moderator for tonight's program. Tom is going to say a few words about the new center, and then he's going to provide a little bit of background for our panel discussion, and then we will go on to the actual panel. Tom's bio, along with all of those of our panelists, are in your program. So with that, I would like to welcome Tom O'Brien to the podium. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen, and welcome everyone to what I think will be a really interesting and lively discussion tonight. This is a bit of a different format than we used for the first 2 industry outlooks, but we felt we had so much expertise that we wanted to share with you, both from the traditional categories of industry and academia, that we wanted to make sure that we had as many voices heard on this topic as possible. So as Jen said, I'm going to provide a little bit of background on the center, maybe try to frame the discussion a bit about the transportation workforce by providing some high-level data. And then we're going to have first our industry panel answer some questions about the state of the transportation workforce and the challenges that they face, and also perhaps provide a call to action to those of us who are from colleges and universities on how we can help them do their jobs better. And then we'll open it up and we'll have what I think is a really good discussion. The last 2 industry outlooks have had a really lively and dynamic discussion. So as Jen mentioned, we are one of 5 regional centers that the Federal Highway Administration established in the fall of 2014. This builds upon the efforts of the U.S. Department of Transportation to develop what they're calling a national network for the transportation workforce, and trying to collaborate and coordinate better with their partners in the departments of education, who have a direct link to the career and technical ed folks, and to the Department of Labor, who are much more tied into the community colleges and the workforce investment boards. As workforce centers, we were challenged to develop clearinghouses of information to become a resource for the people who are doing workforce development on the ground, whether that's in the classroom or on the job, to help broker, be a broker of information and services for at the center of those different worlds of education, labor, and transportation, and perhaps most important, to help the US DOT and their partners better understand the nature of the transportation workforce at a regional level. So what we are charged with doing as a center is performing labor market analysis, identifying workforce and training needs for various transportation sectors, evaluating the effectiveness of existing educational materials, and establishing that resource clearinghouse. Because this is a really broad topic and resources are not infinite, we've each been asked also to have a thematic focus. And we decided in our proposal that those 8 states in the Southwest had some unique aspects that tied them all together. One is that they were significant borders and gateway regions with significant transportation workforce activity tied to maritime ports, airports, and border crossings. That the freight corridors that crossed those states made us uniquely positioned to look at issues of intelligent transportation systems and transportation corridor management. And then FHWA also charged each of us as a center to take on a barrier to entry to the workforce. So to focus our research efforts, our resource development activities around a barrier to entry. And we are going to be focusing on language acquisition as a barrier to entry to the workforce. So we have a significant challenge in front of us, but it should be exciting. We have a really strong team that, as Jen mentioned, is built upon our partnership in METRANS with Cal State Long Beach and USC here, the Price School of Public Policy. We have ICF International, which is a labor market, Texas-based labor market firm that's going to be doing, coordinating a lot of the labor market analysis at the regional level, building upon what they've done at the national level. Texas A&M University's Transportation Institute, which has already successfully developed data clearinghouses for the Federal Highway Administration. They're going to perform that function for us and help integrate some of the efforts of the various centers across the nation. And then finally, the National Occupancy Competency Testing Institute, NOCTI, which is actually, they're effective though, they're really effective. NOCTI are experts in K through 12 education and will connect us to those folks who are doing career and technical ed and who are feeding the pipeline into the colleges and universities. Because we are just beginning our efforts in data collection, I thought I would set the stage by showing you 3 slides. These are some preliminary data on the state of the transportation workforce that was developed by Jobs for the Future and the Learning Center. Learning Center is a transit-focused workforce development outfit based in Washington. And this was research that was funded in the fall by the U.S. Department of Transportation and the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Career, Technical, and Adult Education. And the purpose of the work that they were doing for our national network, so the FHWA network, was to develop a white paper analyzing future skills and training needs of the transportation industry. They looked at the 6 sectors that are on this slide here. And the idea was to get a better picture of current industry employment in transportation, projected industry and occupational job openings by career area, occupations by sector, geographic hotspots. And they wanted to do this by looking at not only Historical Bureau of Labor Statistics data, but by using some new tools that we're actually also going to be using in our data analysis, things like Wanted Analytics and Burning Glass, which, if you're not familiar with those, go out and mine real-time job postings. So we get a better understanding of what skills are being asked for, what certifications, what degree programs are being asked for, and in combination with the historical data, we hopefully get a more robust picture of the transportation workforce. So a couple of key things from this JFF TLC study. 50% of the current transportation workforce is over the age of 45, and this is 8% higher than the national average when it comes to workforce development, which can create some significant challenges. We'll have to ask Art if he thinks this is correct, but according to this study, transit and railroad have the highest percentage of workforce within these sectors facing retirement in the near future, which creates not only retention but new hiring challenges. Okay. With regard to projected net growth, net job growth by state and on the whole. The transportation industry, those 6 sectors, are projected to add 417,000 some odd jobs by 2020. Now those are net, that's a net increase. It's about a 10.6% increase, which mirrors more or less what's happening at the national level. But the expected demand for hiring and training is closer to 4.6 million to take into account all of the new hire needs, growth, retirements, and turnovers. Okay? And a significant portion of those are in lower level jobs like trucking, some 1.8 million, but rail and maritime, as we said, most likely to be impacted by retirement. The good news is that 13 out of the top 20 jobs provide wages that are higher than the median average in the US. The bad news is that of those job openings, right, 68%, there's a 68% more job openings than there are annual completions of the related educational requirements for those positions, whether they're certifications or degrees, with the expectation being that while we know there's a lot of on-the-job training that happens in all of these positions, there is a much better job that we can be doing in matching the needs of industry with what we're doing in the program. There's net growth in everywhere except Kentucky and Vermont. Fastest growth is going to occur in pockets on the West Coast, the Gulf Coast, the upper Mid-Atlantic. California does fairly well by these standards. We'll hear whether our panelists think that this rosy picture is warranted. The biggest growth, as you can see, is projected for one of the key fracking states, which is North Dakota. Right? And then the last slide before we get started is the top 50 metro areas with the most projected job growth. And this data reveals that much of the regional transportation job growth is driven by growth in our larger metro areas, with the largest number of job openings in places like New York, Dallas, Houston, and right here in Southern California. So that's sort of the background to get us started. The work that JFF and TLC is doing for the network and what we'll be doing at the regional level, we hope will let us dig down within the region and see if this is in fact borne out. But at this point, I'd like to call up our industry panel to start the discussion. We have a really talented panel. Mike Christensen, who's the senior executive for supply chain optimization at the Port of Long Beach. Art Leahy, who's the chief executive officer of Metrolink. CJ Nord, who's a trustee with the Institute for Supply Management, Los Angeles. And Jake Raker, the senior director for network strategy and engineering from Kroger. So if I could invite you all up to take a seat and we'll begin our discussion. Let me start by asking each of you first to tell us a little bit about your organization, your agency, the role you play in it, to help orient the audience. And if you could, the typical role played by a transportation professional in your world, right? Our focus tonight is on the transportation professional, right? So, well, I'll start with ladies first, if that's okay, and my friend CJ.
Institute for Supply Management was founded 100 years ago, and we're here to enhance the value and performance of procurement and their organizations worldwide. So in a nutshell, we're here to increase profits. ISM's core competency is procurement. Our members manage $1 trillion in annual spend. That's in the public and in the private sector. And in this board today, the role that I represent is the professional that would be buying logistics. So I'm the supply chain manager for California Faucets, which is a local manufacturer, and I've been in manufacturing in this region for a little over 20 years.
Mike Christensen, I am representing the Port of Long Beach. Long Beach is roughly half of the San Pedro Bay Ports complex in terms of freight throughput. The complex itself, LA Long Beach, represent about 40% of all the containerized goods that come in and out of the United States. So we represent the number 1, number 2 ports in the U.S., and it's combined, it's far ahead of the number 3, which would be New York, New Jersey. As an enterprise, the Port of Long Beach is relatively small. We're little less than 500 people in the organization itself. But as representing all of the activity that goes on in that harbor, we're huge in terms of economic impact and the jobs that we represent. All total, the gateway represents about 900,000 California jobs in logistics. As a port, Long Beach is a little less than 400,000 of those jobs. So a big economic engine, extraordinarily dynamic in terms of change. I'd say right now the gateway in the industry is undergoing change at the rate and of the type not seen since the advent of the container. It's that dramatic in terms of how the business is changing, and we can maybe talk a little more as the discussion goes on. But glad to be here, and thank you very much, Tom, for hosting this.
Mike, quickly, what types of positions might a graduate of a program at our universities find themselves in the ports if they had a transportation degree?
Well, I'm kind of wearing two hats. One is, again, as a relatively small enterprise as the Port of Long Beach, we hire a lot of folks in a very broad range of disciplines, all the way from logistics to information technologies to engineering. Anybody interested in project engineering? We have about 50 job openings right now, and we are having a devil of a time filling those. You know, we're about at the midpoint in a $4.5 billion capital program just at the Port of Long Beach, with a fair amount also going on the LA side. So it's a very broad range of technical and business expertise. If you broaden this out to include the entire industry, it becomes a real interesting mix of a blue collar, what I might call green collar, technology and environmental, and white collar management in logistics. A big part of what Dr. O'Brien does out of CSU Long Beach in terms of preparing folks for logistics, and every one of those categories is needing people.
My name's Jake Raker. I'm with the Kroger Company. We're based out of Cincinnati, Ohio. You hopefully know us from either Ralph's or Food for Less locally here in the California area, and do all your shopping there. I actually am the Senior Director of Network Strategy and Engineering. I have responsibility for all of our capital planning, our distribution centers, our transportation network, where we put our distribution centers, where we acquire land, how we build our distribution centers, how we operate our distribution centers and transportation networks to service our stores across the United States. We have about 3,700 stores, and that includes our supermarkets. We're the largest supermarket retailer in the U.S., but then when you add in our jewelry stores, also our convenience stores, we total up to about 3,700 stores in about 35 states. We employ about 380,000 associates across the U.S. If you look at the transportation part of that operation or our company, maybe more, I would call it more the supply chain section of the company, we've got about 10 to 12,000 people that work for us. Here locally in Southern California, we've got about 2,200 to 2,500. And there is a lot of opportunity, like you heard Michael talk about, in our industry. In our arena right now, someone with a transportation background, supply chain background, would basically be able to, if you take a look at our operations, there's three tiers, I would say. There are local level, transportation manager, supply chain manager, that is going to be able to contribute immediately by day-to-day interaction with running our business, managing people, managing operations, coordinating with our stores and customers, and overseeing the general operations. Regionally, we have leaders, supply chain leaders, logistics leaders, transportation leaders that oversee multiple sites, divisions, and states, and take a look a little bit broader, a little bit bigger picture, and have some control and responsibility for route planning, transportation routing, inbound and outbounding. And then on a corporate level, on a little bit broader national level, we have some of our senior transportation team that negotiates all of our rates with our carriers, with our vendors, inbound, outbound rates, looks at route planning, coordination of best optimization of mileage use, cube utilization, those type of things from a transportation standpoint. So quite a bit on the table in our world, and we're always looking for good people.
I've just concluded 44 years off and on with Metro, and I have a full 30 days with Metrolink. So I pretty much got it nailed down pretty good. If I get my metros and Metrolinks mixed up, it's not on purpose. If, luckily, I'm hard to embarrass. So actually, I'm going to comment more tonight probably on Metro because there's 10,000 employees there. Metrolink has altogether about 600. Combined, they work on one of the largest bus systems in the nation. They fund all the municipal carriers, bus carriers. They work on trains, light rail, and subway. Biggest capital program in the nation. Commuter rail, that's Metrolink. We coordinate with Amtrak, with high-speed rail. We're involved in highway construction, design construction, and planning bikes, bike paths, all the rest of that kind of stuff. And goods movement, we work with the ports because we try to get stuff off the highways, local highways, and rail lines so that we can get our other stuff done. In general, Metro and Metrolink are great places to work. Think about this. We are redesigning the second biggest city in the country and one of the biggest in the world. That's about as good as it gets. Not only can you come there and have a meaningful career and do great things, there's a lot of adrenaline, and it's really good. Metro and Metrolink have engineers, construction managers, all the other professional staffs that you would figure on having in a big organization like that. I think an area which is not often thought of, especially by folks who are well educated, is operations. Transit operations tend to be people who are long on the tooth. They have a lot of experience. There's a lot of jobs there that pay real well, but typically those jobs are shunned by folks who are well educated. I'm telling you, there's a gold mine of opportunity at a place like Metro or Metrolink for those jobs. In fact, during my time at Metro, we put maybe, 15 or 20 young people, very well educated, into operations. They will end up running that place in 5 or 10 or 20 years, and they're going to make a lot of money. So I hope you think about that. You know, these are complex projects that require coordination with Caltrans, with high-speed rail, with the federal government, with the state government, with the cities, with the counties. A lot of good stuff, complicated, endlessly complicated, but in the end, exciting if we can get it done and with success.
Do the data about the impact of retirement ages on the transit industry ring true to you?
Softly, yes. When I was in Orange County, I was in Orange County for 8 years. I chaired a mentoring committee for WTS, a women's group, and I realized back then I had a flash that was obvious after I had it, which was that by being family friendly, we could outcompete private firms that pay a lot more money. At Metro, when I arrived there 6 years ago, I realized we faced the crisis. Those data are correct. You know, there's a lot of people there who are going to leave Metro in the next 5 or 10 years who have a lot of jobs that pay real well. So over the past 6 years at Metro, we've done things like enhanced recruitment. We've expanded the training program at places like Trade Tech for folks who work in electronics and maintenance, mechanics. We have a large internship program. We have an early entry program for folks who are college graduates to come into Metro and get paid. The purpose of that is we get some work out of them, they get some work out of them, but at the same time, the real goal is to have a soft spot in their heart for Metro because they're going to come back maybe in 10 or 20 or 30 years. So they can come to Metro, they can contribute to great things, and Metro is family friendly. I'll give you an example of that. A year ago, there was a woman who was running, family friendly is good for young men, but it's really good for young women. So a year ago, there was a young woman who was managing the tower under construction at 7th and Figueroa, tallest building west of Chicago. We got her to come to Metro to work in construction management at Metro because we're family friendly. So she can come and work on subways and light rail lines and freeways, and she can have her kid, her family. So you should think about Metro. And Metrolink.
Mike, let me ask you a question. You mentioned these 500 engineering positions, right? When those applicants come in the door, what type of skills are you looking for? Either content specific, but maybe some of the other non-discipline specific skills that would matter to you.
And everything we deal with in terms of the projects that we develop in both ports are basically building in a brownfield environment. So you're kind of laying infrastructure over infrastructure, which makes it a whole lot more challenging. The ones that we're looking at have a combination of solid engineering education, but that's just the entry point. And the majority of the things that we're looking at require a little bit of experience. Now that even at the entry level, one of the things we have noted is the importance of having some level of, whether it's internships or whether it's general job experience. Doesn't necessarily have to be in the field of engineering. But the applicants that we select and the ones that seem to succeed are ones that have a little bit of solid real world experience. And it could almost be in any area. Certainly on the engineering or construction side is helpful. But if they've done well in any field at all, which gives them interpersonal skills, real world interpersonal skills, we find that as a real advantage.
One of the things that we talk about quite a bit, and I think it's maybe important to be thinking about it early rather than later, is the impact of leadership. And you don't, in our world, we talk a lot about not having to have necessarily a specific skill set in a specific area. If we are looking for a senior transportation manager, a director of engineering, a senior supply chain manager running our distribution centers, we have taken a little different path over the last couple of years and tried to look at individuals that are maybe a little more well-rounded, that have good leadership skills, are excellent communicators, can cross-functionally communicate well, and obviously the background and the skill is very, very important. But having that leadership background, having the willingness to learn and being able to communicate, learn, and be willing to engage our people is very, very critical.
And for the new hires who demonstrate that capacity but may need some further development, are there resources that are made available, or how much do you look to the college and university to help support you in that?
Yeah, I mean, I think both are extremely important. I mean, internally we have a couple of things that we utilize. We obviously have on-the-job training. We actually have a leadership model that is introduced very early on, with not just our leadership new hires or individuals we bring in senior level positions, but we engage all of our associates top to bottom with that message of the importance of really some 8 key behaviors, focusing on the people, focusing on results, so that they understand what we're looking for. But from a leadership standpoint, having the ability to have that exposure, getting some on-the-job training, and then we actually do a lot of work where we're lucky in that we have 41 distribution centers across the U.S. and 38 manufacturing plants, and we have with my team, we have international responsibilities. And so we try to take our leaders and people who have good ability, interest in learning, and the potential to succeed. We try to get them exposed in other areas to build their real life experience, as well as anything they bring to the table when they come to us.
We've recognized that as a real good retention policy. And both the Port of Long Beach and our neighbors across the harbor have a tremendous tuition reimbursement program. And I'm not sure that's something that higher education policy makers have really targeted, but we look to that for 2 things, not only in terms of retention, but also in terms of keeping skill sets sharp among our workforce. So we have the ability to send folks. We've had quite a number of folks that have come to USC here, all the way through PhD programs. And that has a big return to us on not only retention, but on also sharpening skills of our established employees.
I suspect you guys will agree with this. On top of this, on top of the skill sets, the people who are going to be successful are those who have an unyielding determination to get the task done, who I say to them, be like water, find a way, be unrelenting. You got to be creative and collaborative and unrelenting. And in fact, you have to have now and again the ability to show courage and tolerance of your own mortality. If you're afraid, then you become cautious. If you become cautious, then you lose value. So I agree with everything that was said. All those things are important, but you got to have a little bit of backbone as well. And you got to be willing, yeah, you got to have fire. You got to be willing to tell the boss no. Now, you better be ready.
I just wanted to chime in and agree with you two gentlemen. You've got to be able to tell the boss no, but in a way that is constructive and uses your soft skills. That word keeps coming up again and again. Soft skills will make or break you. And it's hard to teach people soft skills. You know, it really is. That's something that we were just talking about the other day. And Jake had mentioned leadership, the importance of leadership, and I just wanted to offer a suggestion that really a great way to gain leadership skills, if you're not gaining them on your job, is by going into volunteer leadership. The Institute for Supply Management, CSCMP, you can gain a role on their boards of directors that turns you into a leader. And then your employers will, I absolutely guarantee you, see that.
This again would be for all of you, but at the risk of offending some of our students in the audience, do you notice a generational difference in the development of some of these soft skills or the ability to sort of challenge a boss? Are the expectations for what happens on the job different? Yes?
I do have one of those, and I'm sure you guys would all like to add into, but you know, there's a lot said about millennials being different today, but really, on a whole, your millennial is no different from when I fell into that age range. And one of the things that I've learned over time that I would like to pass on to people in their, you know, say 20s, is that the implementation of the projects, as Art had mentioned, that may take you a decade. If it's something that you really believe in, to your point, be tenacious about it, but you can't be obnoxious about it, because you may have to push that project forward. There's one that took 8 years to implement that I finally brought into fruition. So
I like millennials because they're all going to be low-income underachievers, so they'll take transit. You know, it's I think of it as market development. Actually, joking aside, that comment only applies to the UCLA people here. At Metro and Metrolink, there's a lot of young people, really smart young people who are in their 20s and early 30s who have everything that we've been talking about. They're going to be successful.
Kind of had a little hint of this question maybe coming, and I grabbed our HR director because I kind of wanted to get another viewpoint from someone and she's like a 35-year HR professional, and I have my own observations. It was nice to know that they kind of synchronized. And also having some of my older kids in that millennial category, I have some very personal experience on this. But yeah, there are some deficiencies and there are some differences. You know, we've got in our enterprise, say, 4 generations in the workplace right now, depending on how you look at it. And I think your chart kind of showed that disparity. I think you had broken into all 4 of them. I think as we see the millennials coming into the workforce in our enterprise, we're seeing some deficiencies in some basic communication skills. And this splits between written communication, able to actually put something in writing and have it be really good, and also interpersonal communication skills. And one of the other things we've seen is a kind of a respect for authority issue. We see that if some of the millennials that have come into our enterprise, when you drop them into the organization and they're kind of told to do something, sometimes they're not real willing to do it, at least basically being told to do it. And I don't know how you instill or you improve on that through an institution of higher learning, other than perhaps give them an opportunity to get some real life experience. And I know, Tom, in your organization, you are really good about putting people into internship programs, and that's where a lot of this thing can be shaken out. But those are a couple of deficient areas that we've noted on millennials.
It's a challenge when you instruct in the classroom. The expectation is different for what the learning material should look like and how it's presented, I think. And that's not always a bad thing. It keeps us on our toes, but how it translates into the workplace, I wonder.
I actually kind of took your lead and spoke to a few people with a little insight. We may have this topic. But I actually went and talked to some of our interns. At my office in Cincinnati, we have a handful of interns who come from University of Cincinnati and Xavier, and they are doing some fabulous work for us. And they have taken to the opportunity with a lot of enthusiasm, with a lot of engagement. And so I asked them, hey, what's working well? What do you think doesn't work well? You're living this. Give me some feedback. And interestingly enough, almost all of them had made a comment that when they got the opportunity, when they looked at the internship, when they were joining the company, they didn't really know what they were getting into. And they didn't really know what to expect, and they had no idea that logistics, transportation, supply chain management, was anywhere near as cool as it is now that they're there. And that is a serious comment. I'm not trying to sell you, but so that was refreshing to hear that. One of the things, though, that was very interesting that I've taken to heart and I will continue to use as we go forward is they said that, we didn't really know what the career path was. We didn't really know that there was even anything in logistics or in transportation or in supply chain. And the interesting thing with this group was that we had not necessarily gone out and searched for supply chain specific individuals. We actually took somebody who has marketing, is pursuing marketing. We have somebody that's pursuing accounting. And they are right now extremely interested in logistics. They don't want to do anything but what they're doing. And so I think one of the things that would help me in our world, specifically hearing that feedback, is doing a better job of maybe creating a picture, a vision of where those opportunities are and what that career path looks like. Because I believe, my perspective is that a lot of people, young and old, associate transportation, supply chain leadership, logistics leadership with old, dirty, dingy buildings, gray, dark, wood pallets stacked on each other, old equipment, just not a very enticing atmosphere to work in. And when you look at our arena today and what we are doing and where the industry is going, where the business is going, it is completely different. There is nothing, I believe, that is as technologically advanced as what we're going to see in supply chain.
That was actually my follow-up question. One of the challenges we face in academia in preparing people to understand that pathway is knowing what the jobs might be 10 years down the road, and we're uncertain. So do you have a sense of what the transportation professional 10 years down the road, CJ might look and what come to mind, might look like?
I would say for when it comes into manufacturing, that it's going to be a mix of warehousing abilities along with the ability to operate really seamlessly with technology. One of the advancements is in just the movement of goods within your own system and having that done correctly. That's the only thing I can add from that. Within mid-sized business, the person that buys transportation is often somebody like me, the supply chain manager. So it's going to be a person that wears two hats. So having in a lot of your mid to small size business, having a strong background in transportation enables you to be able to effectively buy transportation services.
Mike, you wanted to say something?
Well, I think therein lies one of the biggest challenges we collectively face, because based on the rate of change we're seeing in trans-Pacific trade, in port logistics, containerized movement, I don't think we know what the people who are graduating are going to be facing in their careers. I don't think we have a clue what the kind of changes the industry, and this is based on an extrapolation of the rate of change we're seeing right now. With that said, I think if we're prepared with strong basic technical skills in whichever of the fields they're being prepared for, but as much adaptability as they can possibly be trained for, because I think it's a given that once they're 5 years into their career, it's going to be different than what they thought it was going to be, and probably different than what we thought it was going to be. A lot of the skills that Art talked about, just basic, courageousness, and willing to be adaptable. Courage is going to be a big part of it. Being adaptable within their profession, it's almost guaranteed that they'll be somewhere that they didn't think they were going to be when they started their path, but it's going to be guaranteed to be exciting and interesting.
Art, what about from the transit perspective?
I agree with everything that's been said. I would add to that, in an amazingly complex environment, transit, 88 cities in LA, 190 in the Metrolink area, in a complex environment with attention from senators and secretaries of transportation and governors, and with the ideal person in the future will have the ability to deal with those things and be able to interact with blue-collar workers. 80% of the Metro's workers and Metrolinks are blue-collar. So to get them to buy into the goals and the objectives and the values and the culture of an organization means one has to know how to talk to them. And that's a skill set. If you don't value and respect the blue-collar workers, they will know that, and that will undermine your ability to achieve your fundamental objectives.
So with that, before we bring up the academic panel, I want to ask you each to give us a challenge. Seeing what these issues are. You had another comment before?
Well, no, go please.
Oh, so what would you ask us to do first in the university to help the student be as prepared for a job that requires multitasking, adaptability, interpersonal skills, as well as whatever content that they have to learn in the classroom?
I would like to see increased emphasis on soft skills. And one of the things that just came to mind when Art was speaking is the ability to be yelled at and maintain your composure, right? Because most of us learn this the hard way, right? And this is a millennial challenge. A 25-year-old person of whatever sex they are is going to, more likely than not, fall completely apart the first time somebody gets really cranky with them. And I would like to present the challenge to teach them how to deal with that a little bit better.
Well, sitting on one curriculum advisory committee, I can appreciate the position you're in. I mean, we could tell you to add this, add that, add the other. And you've already, I recognize you're already terrifically crowded in your curriculum right now. But with that said, please emphasize communication skills and be sure that even the most technical students that are graduating have some solid communication skills and some element of interpersonal skill and leadership. With that said, I think there's another challenge that needs to go out, and that's beyond academia. And I don't know if that's going to be another question here, but if it's not, I think there needs to be a challenge to the end users of the students that graduate from these institutions, and that's to become a little bit more of a partner. And I think you've got a good handle on the fact that internships are, I think, a key to the future. Is give your students some level of real-world experience. And in order to do that, you're going to have the cooperation of the organizations that will be the users of these wonderful young people coming out of the institutions. And be sure and offer up some internship opportunities.
Yeah, I was just going to add one other comment, and it was really kind of jumping on the back of what was said earlier about being flexible and adaptive. And I think that part of learning is more critical. I'll just say is very, very critical. Our people, myself included, our senior leadership teams, are learning how to be change adaptive every day, and our business is changing consistently. Our customers are telling us something different today than they were telling us last year, and our business is based around what the customer wants. And we may be, or we may believe we are very, very good at something, and we may feel confident about where we're at, but the minute that the customer expectation changes, we have to be able to change. And I think that's a lesson that just in general is good to learn early and maybe get some exposure and experience to the importance of change adaptability in the education environment.
I feel so bad for CJ. Gee, people have yelled at you? I've been a CEO for 19 years, and that hardly ever happens to me. Well, except for the board meetings, and then a few other times. You know, I'll just give an example. I find among many people, and it gets worse with the younger ones, if you say, did you talk to somebody about a problem, they'll go, well, I sent them an email. So they think that passive communication fills the bill. They don't understand between passive and active. If you got a problem with somebody, you got to talk to them. An email is a cop-out. It's a way of washing your hands of the problem and saying, well, I sent it over to Jack. I don't know where he is now, right? That's a cop-out. It's a completely inadequate thing. They need to understand that the end of their education is just the start of their education. They need to be technically sound. I agree with the comments on communication and consensus building and coalition building. I'll just give you a quick example. For a while, I was a journalism major. At Loa, I had many, many majors. But I was a journalism major, so I learned what a lead paragraph was. You've heard of it, the who, what, where, why, when. At a board meeting, when I'm talking to the board about some project, typically what I really give them is a lead paragraph, 25 to 35 words. Now, they don't know that half the time I've just said everything I know about this project. They think, wow, Art's really on this thing, right? The fact is I just exhausted my knowledge. You know, if you can describe what happened in World War II in 35 words, people will give you a lot of money.
With that, I would like to invite up Elizabeth Grady, the Jeffrey J. Miller Chair in Government, Business, and the Economy and the Vice Dean here at the Saul Price School. Ingrid Martin, the Director of Graduate Programs and Professor of Marketing in the Cal State Long Beach College of Business Administration. And James Moore, Professor, Industrial and Systems Engineering, Public Policy and Management, and Civil Engineering, and Vice Dean for Academic Programs in the Viterbi School of Engineering at USC. Want to get a little response. And all of them were chosen because of their ability to yell at students. We just sort of got a challenge, and I heard that we need to prepare students who can be adaptable, who can multitask, who have strong, both I assume written and oral communication skills that Mike brought up. Are we prepared to do this? Are we in a position to do what they're asking for all of us? And if not, what changes need to be made? And Ingrid, why don't I start with you?
Yes, I think we are, and I think we're on the road in terms of in academia and working with our students. Some of the things that we do focus on are soft skills. We focus on leadership, we focus on teamwork, and especially in a business school, teamwork and working in teams, leadership, all of these things are very important. They're part of our academic curriculum, and I think we're moving students in that direction. There are issues. For example, technology and the use of technology in the classroom, the use of technology in terms of, like you were saying, I think, Art, emailing becomes an important part of how our students communicate. And I don't know if I would say that that's all bad. What it has done, I think, is opened up our students to looking at communication from being a lot more frank and honest about how they feel and what they think. And what I found is by doing that, you're learning more about where they're going, what they're thinking. And so I think there's some positive things that can come out of that.
We wrestle with this constantly. Institutions, there are different flavors of institutions. We've got different missions, and we contribute in different ways, right? So we've got a big advantage here in Los Angeles, and the opportunities that we face in Los Angeles and strategies we develop to try to exploit them will be different than what happens elsewhere. I'm happy we're in Los Angeles for many reasons, but we've got an enormous international population of students to work with at USC, and for that matter at the University of California, or for that matter at Cal State. UC and Cal State, however, also have a slightly different public policy mission as educational institutions than the private institutions do, right? So how we attack this is going to be different across those different flavors of institutions. I think one of the most important things we can do is systematically take advantage of global talent, recognize that all of these institutions have got the means of attracting international students in addition to their domestic clientele, and then working to provide opportunities for those folks to be here and to continue to contribute.
Elizabeth.
I just want to reiterate a few things. I think as a policy school, one of our major strengths is actually being able to teach these soft skills, focus on teams, focus on negotiations, focus on understanding partnerships, whether organizational or individual. I think we do a pretty good job of that, so I think we're all well prepared. I think the yelling part is harder. I think I'm not sure how we help people deal with that. I do think change is also difficult. How do we help people adapt over time. And I'm not sure we have great answers to that one. So that would be the area.
And there's an inherent tension sort of in the often exploratory path that students take on their way to find a career. And there's a tension between that and the sort of the more pressing needs of industry, the customer-driven needs. Do we risk sacrificing our core mission by sort of making that the focus of what we do? Elizabeth?
I don't think so, because I think we're in the business of human capital development in any university. So I think we need to be focused on the long term, giving students the capacity to adapt over time, to build on their skill set, to grow and change. And I don't think we should be so specifically focused on initial workforce needs.
So I would agree with that. I think one of the things that we're moving away from in the academic curriculum is from like functional silos, saying that I'm an accountant, and I'm going to speak from the business since I'm in a business school, but I'm an accountant, I'm a finance person, I'm a marketing person, and moving towards this concept of being able to integrate knowledge cross-functionally. So then what we want our students to do and what we're pushing them to do, especially in our graduate programs, is to focus on the concept of solving a business problem. Rather than saying, I'm going to solve a marketing problem, I'm going to solve an accounting problem, solving a business problem. And by doing that, we hope to make them, as you were saying, adaptable, so that they can take their knowledge from different areas and bring them together and become problem solvers.
All three of our schools have got clear connections to professions, right? Professional bodies, markets that we try to serve. I think we all want to produce folks that have got very flexible skills. When I go to industry and I ask for advice about how our students can be a little bit better than the students they've already hired and how they can compete more effectively, the discussion will often work its way around to tools. So while we want students who we want graduates who can communicate and synthesize, I think, frankly, employers want it both ways. They want flexible, talented, adult, sophisticated thinkers. At the same time, they also want employees that have got deep skills in areas that are important to them. And this creates an enormous tension in engineering. And frankly, I think a flip side of the tension in applied social science programs, where we're probably weakest institutionally, is that we haven't found a middle ground where we really effectively blend technical and social science elements. We try it from time to time. We talk to each other. We come up with blended curricula, but I just don't think we have it down just yet.
Talk a little bit more about that. When you get that input from industry, and they come back and they say, we want this set of skills, or we want this type of student, how nimble are we in the university to be able to respond to that, whether it's through changes in the curriculum or the development of new experiential learning or group projects? Is that a constraint?
Well, USC, bless their hearts, we're an avaricious bunch. So we do adjust, right? Nimble is our middle name. We've all got some internal constraints we have to face. We've all got organizations that we have to answer to and rules we have to play by. And we get frustrated at times. But for the most part, I think that we do pay attention and try to respond.
I would agree with that. I think we're quite nimble. And part of the reason we're nimble is that we have a lot of contact with employers. We have a lot of opportunities to hear what people need and what they want. We have involvements in both our programs, mentoring, a variety of ways that we get this information. And I think we do adapt. So.
Coming from a public higher education rather than private, we work very hard to respond to industry and to the needs of industry. We're also constrained by a hierarchy in our public education system that requires us to jump through a lot of hoops. But having said that, within our various colleges at the university and our different programs, we have been very responsive to what industry is looking for. We do this, for example, with our masters in supply chain, masters in accountancy, all these new programs that we're bringing up, and it's basically looking at what the industry wants and trying to respond to that. It just takes us, I think, a little bit longer.
And what about the responsibility of the faculty member to make sure that they're staying on top of the information so that what we are teaching in the classroom is as relevant as possible for these folks who are hoping to employ us? What are we doing? What can we be doing better in that area?
I think that's our biggest challenge, frankly. So I think new programs are easy to develop, but I think for those of us in the faculty, learning to do something differently is more challenging. Is that a safe thing to say? And I wish as a dean of faculty, I wish I had a better answer for you than I do about how to do that. I do think if we can get people excited about new ways of teaching, about new approaches, then that's the way to do it. But I'd be lying if I said it was easy.
I guess I'd say there are things that could happen that could really help this. I would give some examples, and this would sort of be an idea for some of the organizations here, like, and I wrote these down because I'm not a supply chain person. CPSCM and ISM, so you're with ISM, right? And in the field of marketing, we have organizations that give us access to industry. For example, we have AAA, which is the American Advertising Association. They put out fellowships every year, and faculty can go to advertising agencies and spend a year there learning about the advertising industry and taking that knowledge back into the classroom. We have the Marketing Science Institute, which not only provides those opportunities in different companies, and I think they have about anywhere from 70 to 80 large consumer products companies that they are members of this, but they also provide access to data for us, which is a huge help to us to better understand what industry is looking for, what are the strategies that industry is engaging in, and how can we be a part of that in terms of moving information forward and training our students. And these kinds of relationships with industry are really important for us as academics. I think another thing that we lack in academia is conferences that are joint professional and academics. There's very, very few of those. And so I go to a conference in Portland, Oregon every year that's on sustainability, and it's the only conference that I've been at where you have industry people in sustainability and academics doing research in sustainability plus teaching curriculum in sustainability, and we all get together, and it's like a real exchange of the kind of knowledge that then we can take back to the classroom. And I think those are the kinds of things that can really help us as academics reach out and teach our students and prepare them to be good and have good careers in the supply chain, and I mean across all industries.
The whole point of becoming faculty is to evade responsibility to begin with. Okay.
There's that.
Okay. So I'm really kind of disappointed in the question. But part of it, in engineering, it is, I think it's a recognized problem. And because there's a lot of change in technology. There's not a lot of change in basic science or basic mathematics, but there's certainly a lot of change in technology. So people who enter the field are very cognizant that it's going to be a special challenge. Some people are up to the challenge, some are not. I think one of the problems we have is the way our industry is organized. I really don't think tenure helps. I'm glad that I have it. I
Want to give it up.
I would not give it up. Okay. It is nice to be able to speak truth to power on occasion, preferably not yell, right?
Or be yelled at.
Or be yelled at. Okay. But I think that it contributes a little bit to circumstances where people are disincentivized, faculty are disincentivized to stay current. The penalties are too low. And so maybe if our industry was organized more to implement a fixed period of post-tenure review, or if longer-term fixed-term contracts of, say, 10 years or so were the norm. I mean, I don't really know where our industry is going to go, right? There's a lot of change taking place now. We've got a lot more in the way of full-time research faculty and non-tenure track teaching faculty, a much larger complement at institutions across the board than there used to be. And these folks tend to be a bit more responsive, in my opinion. So I'm hopeful, right? I'll just leave it at that. I'm hopeful.
It's a good point. I know that the U.S. Department of Transportation has externship opportunities for faculty. Just wonder whether the pressures of the tenure and promotion process facilitate that or encourage it. Elizabeth, you're shaking your head. Yeah.
They don't. I mean, I do not see those being a solution. I think that they're not going to get tenure, they're not going to get promoted if they're focused on these types of experiences. On the other hand, I do think there are consulting options that connect us to industry and therefore would be useful. I also think professional associations, and conferences are another way to do that. So I think there are ways, but I'm skeptical of the externship model.
We ended the industry panel by asking them to sort of give us a charge. What would you ask of our industry partners? Data came up. Is that what types of what steps can they take to help us prepare the workforce better and to stay current as instructors and faculty?
Two thoughts. One is more experiential opportunities for our students. I mean, I think these are extremely important, and all of our degree programs require internships or practicum projects or workshops, so industry actively participating. This is a big one. And the other one is participate on our advisory boards. Help us know what's going on. Be mentors for our students.
I would say engaged and committed advisory boards are very important for us. Internships, all these things. I'd also say what I sort of building off of what I had said earlier about some of the associations we have in marketing is the ability to get access to data is so important for us in terms of our students. So our students can actually be able to experience, like through a capstone project or some form of client project or something like that, that they can actually learn and solve business problems in the classroom before they actually head out and start interviewing for jobs. It's almost like this, you have these experiences, then you have internships, and then you have the actual workplace experience. And having access to data, clients, projects, that kind of thing is something that, I think is invaluable for students to prepare them.
First, I'm going to briefly invite Ingrid to the Institute of Industrial Engineers Conference next week,
Okay,
right?
all right.
It's a nice blend of academic and practitioner. I agree with you, they're rare, right?
yeah.
It's not quite the size of Informs, it's about half the size, but it covers that base very nicely.
Great.
I think that the prospect of organized, positions organized to allow faculty to take sabbaticals in organizations would be a great help. I've noticed the executive position that the Port of Long Beach has advertised from time to time, and I'd considered pursuing it from time to time. But it just didn't work out, and I didn't exercise it, but it looked like a very attractive option. I'd say one of the most important things that industry could do to help us, help our students, is consciously, deliberately provide occupational practical training opportunities for international graduates for that crucial year when they're done with their programs and they've got a sanctioned opportunity to work in industry and gain experience. And then, if it works out, consider sponsoring them for an H-1B.
I'm also going to put a pitch in for the October 21st through 23rd International Urban Freight Conference, which is also an opportunity by design to have industry interact with faculty and our government partners. Before we open it up for some questions, was there anything that was said that the industry panel wants to respond to? I mean, you've all been gracious to take part in one of our boards at some point, and when we make that call, do you go running, normally, and to say, how do I get out of this? But if there's anything in particular that was said that you wanted to comment on, I wanted to give you that chance before we open it up.
I think a lot of good things were said, and I don't differ with any of them. But there was one thing I realized as I was listening that was not said. I didn't say it, and I should have. When I was going through school, I had no idea until I got into mid-career how gratifying and emotionally rewarding and even fun it is to have a career in management. I did not realize that being a manager is addictive because adrenaline is addictive. You know, doing big things is highly rewarding. I don't know that we emphasize that enough. It's fun to be in an organization where you get to do big things and get big things accomplished. It's a rewarding thing to do. Yes, I still want to get paid, but the emotional rewards are gigantic.
I'm from Transportation Engineer Department. From Jeremy is my professor, and I have a question. I'm international student from China, so I graduate this year. So when I face a career, I have a question because when I come to America, no one tell me the importance of communication or how to social. But when I get involved into career, compared to the advantage of the local student, I think that sometimes it's kind of hard for international students to get involved into a career. But we have some advantage because we from another culture or a country, but sometimes it is kind of hard to get a good start. So do you guys have any advice?
This is something that I keep saying again and again, but find a professional organization related to the field that you would like to go into, go to their meetings, and if possible, join their board. And those people will help usher you into your career, and you'll find friends and mentors that you'll keep all the way through your career.
I mentioned the early entry program. You know, there's a lot of foreign students that work there. You know, and you ought not to get discouraged. During my career, I've been rejected for far more jobs than I got. You know, so don't take it personal.
And again, depending on whether your career path goal is to work here in the United States or to establish a career in China, tremendous opportunities exist in our world in terms of ports and exchanges. And I would say reach out to us as a port. And depending on where you are from in China, where you'd want to go, we have relationships with Shanghai Port Authority and ports all over China that are doing tremendously interesting engineering projects. And try to get an internship, even as you've graduated, and wherever you'd like to go. There is unbelievable opportunity, particularly in civil engineering.
So when I got out of school years and years ago, I was a journalism major. I thought I had all the soft skills, and I got that part of it. What I think is missing are the actual project management skills, the basics of taking a project on and delivering it. And I was wondering whether in your fields, if you're experiencing the same problem, that the colleges and the universities are not putting out graduates who understand how to manage a project.
From the perspective that we have some people working with us that we've recently hired in our project management, project development teams. And there is a little bit of a learning curve there, right? But I actually think it's okay. It doesn't strike me as a major concern. It's an opportunity for us to really work with them, teach them, help them grow, coach, develop, provide the leadership that they need. But there is that gap, right? And I think we see that on our end across our corporation with some of the project management skills. I think it's more about people in general following through completely from start to finish on a lot of the things we have in front of them. So
I think, you know, to that issue, and let me take my Port of Long Beach hat off and reach back into my past a few months on. I came from the Port of Los Angeles and was in charge of all the infrastructure there for about 8 years. And I kind of agree with what Jake is saying. Project management skills, I think that that the institutions have other things they could prepare you for that are more important, because the successful project managers I have seen in my career have basically come into the profession with a real strong background in some other really more basic skills. And a lot of those are almost more attributes than they are learned skills in terms of follow-through, in terms of ability to organize. So I think that those are things that kind of you come with, and then as in my experience, as you go into the profession, the organization you join will hone those skills and will give you some of the branding that they like to have on their project management.
So you mentioned that the soft skills can be, I believe it was CJ that mentioned that soft skills are something difficult to teach sometimes, which is true. That's usually because the person is not open to it, to that criticism. But if they were open to that criticism, they were humble enough to approach you and say, hey, I have problems with my soft skills, how would you address that? How would you steer them if they were actually willing to take that on?
People rarely come up to you and ask you for their help with soft skills, but often you see with your employees that they're struggling in those areas. And so I coach as the opportunities arise, and I coach from my own experience, what supervisors have shared with me in the past, and from some classes that I've taken on communications, the ability to communicate and to handle conflicts. Also, just as an aside, I read a really helpful book, How to Be Happy at Work No Matter What. And one of the tips that it gives you in that book is if somebody is yelling at you and you're about to lose your cool, to picture them in some funny way. So I have a vice president at my company that often has floppy dog ears in the staff meeting. And it's a silly tip, but I would coach them both through education experience and some books that they could read.
So I think, listening to both the industry folks and the academic folks, from my experience, I think students are in college just for 4 years, and it's not a whole lot of time. And I think that they need to be taught technical skills. Those are really, really important. But in addition to that, what they really need to understand is, they need to learn is how to have common sense and how to critically think. So I think that if they could critically think, that really helps no matter where they go and what they do. And I think the other thing that is really missing is sometimes is for people to have a sense of responsibility, that when they are doing something, how to be responsible about things, how to get through things, and not to be afraid to make mistakes. Because the thing is that that in the beginning part of your career, it's okay to make mistakes, because there are people who are going to pick you up, and you can afford to make mistakes, and for them to know that. And I think for the part when they go into the working life, you can't teach everything at school, so there needs to be programs and industry or in public agencies for mentoring, so that you are developing these skills that you want people to have in terms of soft skills and all, that is being done through mentoring and continued education, because a lot of that education is happening when they are at work. So I would really think that the universities and colleges really need to concentrate on developing technical skills and critical thinking. That's most important. The rest can be taught at the industry.
So my name is Sungya. I'm an undergraduate student studying planning, and my question was, as I look for internships and jobs, it seems as if the engineering and technical side is very important. And right now, for example, I'm interning for LADOT, and I'm the only planning student out of probably 20 engineering interns, doing obviously the same job right now, but as they open the job application, engineering degree is required, a EIT is required. So in that case, I feel like it seems as there's restrictions, or I'm not sure if there's a whole different field of transportation planning that I'm missing. So I just want to hear what the bridge is between planning and engineering and maybe even supply chain.
My title right now is a supply chain optimization executive. I'm a third-generation civil engineer, and what the heck does that have to do with supply chain? It's interesting and intriguing, and as I look back on my career path, I could only say, and perhaps Dr. Moore could chime in on this too, but there is a high bar for entry into some of these professions, and I think that's the industry puts it there because they want the best quality people they can get. And that's one way to winnow out some people who are perhaps less qualified. However, that said, once you get into that profession, chances are you're going to use very little of what you put on that PE exam or whatever you've written to get there. And you will need those adaptability and changeability skills because you will undoubtedly be doing things that you didn't train for and that you perhaps didn't learn for or didn't prepare for in your learning experience. But it is important to have the basic skills, and somewhat prejudiced as I might be, I think engineers can do just about anything because that's what we're trained to do. But again, that's because of the problem-solving skills, whether you call it scientific process or whatever you would apply to the learning that gets you to that point. It's important, but particularly related to the adaptability that you pick up along the way.
Economists, labor economists, when they talk about education, will sometimes point to two bodies of theory. Some will say education is about human capital development. That's the core operation. And some will say it's in part about signaling theory. It's about pointing out that you can finish what you started. You can take responsibility. And there is some empirical evidence that there's, I come down on the human capital development side. There is merit to the signaling theory discussion, because it's not true that if you finish 3.5 years of college that you earn 7/8 of the salary that you would if you finished 4 years of college, right? So the difference, part of that difference is, in fact, a signal, the fact that you're willing to finish the program. Don't get discouraged about the over-solicitation of engineering. Take some consolation in the fact that many engineering programs are poorly organized and need to be improved. That we need to make some trade-offs that we haven't made, that we've resisted making. I think we've had a tendency to take the objectives of our accreditation body and the objectives of the faculty and marry the two and form the union of the set and hand the wriggling mass to the students and say, here, you figure out how to make it work. And as a result, engineering nationally loses about 50% of its matriculants. The Viterbi School does not, right? So we'll graduate close to 90% of ours, right? But there's still a lot of room for improvement. General standing advice I give applied social science students is, look, extend yourself a little bit, take some extra calculus. Take a year of calculus. If you feel up to it, take 2 years of calculus. If you've got a discretionary opportunity, take economics. Take policy analysis and systems analysis. There are allied areas that you have access to, and that'll strengthen your hand in the job market. But I can't in good faith say everybody should be an engineer, because the simple truth of the matter is engineering faculties have not done a good enough job designing our curricula.
Art.
I work with an engineer to whom all facts are equally important. So if an employee irritates me, they have to fly to New York, sit next to this guy. When they get there, they're actually suicidal. You know, SCAG and Metro and Metrolink, they have planning programs, and they don't require engineering. So don't give up on that stuff. You know, the advantage that you have is, unlike an engineer, you can distinguish, hopefully, which facts are more important than the others. If you can take 50 hours of, if he won't even know what I'm talking about, you know, if you can take 50 hours of work and summarize it in 5 minutes, people will give you a lot of money.
My question has, I'm not sure what my question is actually, but I've had a few discussions with some of my friends that coming newly graduated. We have a lot of data analysis and a lot of like technical, we're really involved with technology, and we're coming into transportation. And there was some allusions to like how transportation traditionally was sort of like more old school, and that among maybe the older generation that there's a little bit of tension with the technology and like data people. And I want to know more about how you sort of bridge that gap, where we're not, the younger, like the data people are not threatening to the more like paper or traditional people. I don't know, I want to know more about how to bridge that gap.
You're asking, I think, about the intergenerational conflict that we talked in the beginning with, but from the flip side, which I think is a good question.
You will prevail.
Yeah.
This is the challenge we deal with quite a bit in our world as we've expanded technology on the transportation front, onboard computers, data analysis, our GPS tracking, A lot of the things that we have where traditionally our teams, our people, our leaders in transportation were not familiar with that. It was write down a route and a schedule, and you're going to drive this way, and here's a printout of where you're going to go. This is the change management piece that I think across the board people struggle with, and we have an opportunity to work through this, as do teaching people how to adjust. But what we've done quite a bit is we've tried to take our data experts, right? A lot of the people that today work in my world, and I've tried to get them out and have them spend time in the operations with the transportation team, not as an individual bringing data and what we are going to change and here's what you're going to see and we're going to go this direction. It's more about, I want to learn what you do today. I want to understand what today looks like, and give yourself an opportunity as you go through that process to ask questions, to find out what's going on in the existing world, and share your data, right? And share new information that couples with what we are doing today. And as we've worked through this process, and it's not easy and it's not smooth, there's a lot of conflict and there's still challenges, but I think what it's done is it's made our working relationships, our ability for our people to work better, because they understand, people want to know what's happening, what's changing. I think a lot of people are not so much adverse to change, and they don't necessarily dislike technology, they just don't understand what's coming. They don't understand the why we are making a change. And I think where the opportunity lies with us, with people, is sharing the information, telling people the whys.
It's a great question, and I appreciate you bringing it up. And I think, as I had mentioned, as in our enterprise, and I think I could extend this to include our whole industry in terms of port and container and trans-Pacific logistics, we have about 4 generations working together. And there is a lot of frustration over data, but I think it's from a completely different direction. In fact, as I drove up here for this meeting, I had just come from another meeting in which we had a whole lot of the key executives from within the industry sitting around a table kind of bemoaning the challenges we're facing because the data is not flowing efficiently, because the supply chain, links in the supply chain are far too siloed. And the development of systems and data within each silo has far outstripped the ability of each of those links in a supply chain to share that data. There's too much data. There's big data out there that can't be analyzed and harnessed. And so I think this is more of an issue of the older generations within my industry, really looking to the younger generation to help solve a real substantial problem on data sharing. I think Jake hit the nail right on the head. We need the help. We need help with professionals that are far more adept in managing and manipulating the data, but towards an objective, and not just creating it, but actually controlling it and making it work for us, instead of becoming buried in the data or having that data become so proprietarily linked and obscured that we become a slave to it instead of having it become a servant for us.
Your task is to make yourself such an attractive employee with such wonderful skills, soft and hard, that you have some ability to pick who your boss is. So you're going to find a boss. If a guy wants a necktie or whatever, wear the damn necktie, right? But you want to have a guy who wants to work with young people, who wants to learn from you, and who will teach you. You want to have power in the marketplace so that you can pick a boss who will work with you. Not just the first boss, for your whole career.
You had asked about like the data people and then the paper people. Just the one thing that came to mind when you were saying that is we've talked a lot about sending emails. I want to encourage you to not send an email when a simple phone call will resolve the entire matter.
High school and college is, and this is what you measure, is largely individual achievement, and it's competitive. And that seems very antithetical to what we do in a large organization. It is far more collaborative, far more cooperative. Individual success at the expense of someone else's success generally yields an organization that is dysfunctional. So I'm wondering if maybe we're asking too much of you when we're saying to teach these soft skills that are largely collaborative, cooperative, sharing, group success oriented, when that is not really what you're geared towards.
I'm speaking from a business school perspective. And in a business school, if you look at how we evaluate or assess our students, it's usually about 50-50. It's usually on their individual skills and what they can show us in terms of their individual knowledge. And the other part is on their ability to work in teams and produce teamwork or team projects, team case analysis. All of these things require them to learn how to work together, to communicate. Because we have a lot of international students, they have to learn how to communicate across cultures, which is a major learning from both perspectives. So from a business school perspective, I don't know how it is in your colleges, but in a business school perspective, working together collaboratively is a very important part of the curriculum.
I would just second that. I think in the policy school, it's a major focus, how to work in teams. We actually have team building skills that we teach people early on in the program to help them. So this is a core part of what we do. I hope we're doing it well.
The professional development side, which is a lot of what we do at CITT, that's a core focus of our activity. So in partnership with the traditional degree programs, I think the university becomes a center of learning that can occur in a lot of different ways to meet the needs of the industry.
As someone who has had interns and then worked with management, one of the important things to learn with data is to just pick 5 to 7 important facts that support the main point of what you want to communicate. And I think that as instructors, I learned that by having to do abstracts of your paper, because you have to pick out the key points that you want to communicate succinctly with the understanding and the research below. And so regardless of soft or technical education, you need the underlying understanding of what you are doing in your field and the ability to succinctly put it into a bullet PowerPoint for a board presentation or to work with people who are blue collar. Furthermore, just from the transportation side, in our rail operations, people who have the technical track inspections and ability to do signaling are missing, and they're all retiring, and we can't hire them, and that is an area of expertise. And for the international students, you have to be willing to make friends with people who are not in your culture, and you have to ask your supervisors how to navigate the organization culturally appropriately.
I just wanted to say, you guys, I think on the college as well as industry, you guys have done an excellent job. I know I graduated from Cal State Long Beach, and I think with the business program, and I think it was amazing. To me, just looking back at my background, I think high school was more important in that beginner stage. So I was wondering how, I know ITIP, I don't know what it stands for, but
International Trade Education programs.
They do a great job in working with high schoolers, but I was wondering how you guys on the college level work with the high school teachers. I know, Tom, you told me about a program earlier, but.
Yeah, I'll pass it on to the panel, but we, thanks to the Port of Long Beach, the last week of June, we're running a teacher training workshop for teachers in Long Beach Unified School District on how to incorporate maritime issues into the Common Core. It's part cohort development, it's part group exercise, it's part site visit, and it's part mentoring. Each of the 15 participants who had to apply to the program will be matched with an industry mentor who will oversee the development of a maritime-focused lesson plan and who will be in the classroom when that lesson plan is taught. And so that's sort of one of the ways that we're engaging, and it's industry-driven. It's the port who has identified and made the resources available to it. So that's one example, but I know there are many others.
Well, as Tom had mentioned, we've recognized that even at the high school level, it's important to put some internship opportunities out there. So we actually run a high school intern program at the Port of Long Beach to reach out and do that. And if I could, again, take off my Port of Long Beach hat for a minute and put on my hat as a school board member in one of the local school districts. recognizing that even at our district level, school district level, and running a real active STEM program and career outreach program is important, and to communicate with the institutes of higher education along those lines is important too.
One area schools of engineering have gotten the message from a number of different sources is that the contribution to STEM is important. So when I go to American Society of Engineering Education conferences, there's inevitably a substantial amount of attention that's paid to how institutions can support high schools and secondary schools and basically serve our own interests by making sure that there are students qualified to come and pursue our badly organized engineering curriculum.
Well, before I close and thank everyone, I was remiss in not pointing out the Associate Director of the Southwest Transportation Workforce Center, Dr. Tyler Reeb, who's here, and who does a lot of the day-to-day work as we're ramping up the center. So if there are any particular questions about the center as you leave, if we've enticed you for the work that we might be doing, Tyler is a great resource. So, with that, please help me thank this great group of panelists. It's been a really enjoyable evening to moderate.